Hey everyone, today I'm going to walk you through how I set up clean, organized material ID zones on this angel statue model here. It's a key part of the UV unwrapping process, especially if you're planning to texture in multiple softwares or bake maps later on. We'll be using a really handy add-on called Unwrap Me, and I'll show you how I pair that with a seam-based workflow and placeholder materials to stay organized. Any tools I mentioned will be linked in the description where you can find them easily, and on your way down, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our Blender and UV content. Now, let's get creative. So before I touch anything UV related, I always do a quick cleanup pass on the model. I'll check for stray geometry, overlapping faces, and any loose verts that might get in the way later using an amazing add-on called Instant Clean, which I use almost daily on meshes, especially ones I didn't model myself. If the mesh isn't clean, unwrapping becomes a guessing game, and texture seams can show up in really ugly places. This model's already been cleaned up, so I just need to make sure the geometry is ready for materials. By the way, the footage I'm showing you guys today is a time lapse I did with a tool called Timelapse Recorder that's incredibly easy to use and perfect for showing off workflows, tracking your progress through a project, or creating tutorials like I'm doing today without overloading your system recording and requiring a lot of editing later to speed things up. So first for this, I go in and I start placing seams manually. I treat it almost like planning how the model would be built in real life. Anywhere there's a hard edge, a fold, or a natural separation, that's a good candidate for a seam. On this statue, that means edges around the robe, under the wings, and where the face connects to the rest of the head. These seams are going to help with the UV unwrapping, but even more importantly for this step, they're going to define the borders for my material ID zones. Once I've placed the seams, I use Unwrap Me's Select by Curvature feature to quickly grab everything within a seam group. If you toggle up the settings as high as you can, it'll generally select everything that you want it to. This tool is incredibly useful, especially on models like this where everything flows organically. It uses surface curvature to guide the selection inside the seam, which saves a ton of time versus manually selecting each loop or island. So I'll just click the section, adjust the threshold if I need to, and it's ready for assignment. As soon as the section is selected, I'll create a new material slot and assign it to that region. Then I give it a simple placeholder color. These aren't final materials, obviously, they're just visual markers to help me check that everything's been separated correctly. It also makes it easy to catch areas that I might have missed, and it gives me a clear map of the model's material layout. So why does this workflow matter? Setting up these material IDs ahead of time does a few things. First, it keeps the UV layout manageable. When it's time to unwrap, I can isolate and unwrap one material group at a time, which means better control and cleaner islands. Second, if I'm baking textures or exporting to another tool like Substance Painter or Unreal, these material slots act as anchors for textures. Each section already knows what material it belongs to, which is incredibly helpful for shading and texturing workflows. So what I'm doing here is essentially pre-sorting the model. Rather than unwrapping the whole mesh at once and then trying to organize it afterwards, I'm setting things up now so that each material ID corresponds to a logical UV region. Later, I can unwrap my material, keep things cleaned and aligned, and even plan for UDIM tiles if I want more resolution on specific parts of the model. So that's the material ID setup phase done. This setup might seem like a lot of prep, but it saves a lot of time in the long run, and it keeps the whole project clean from start to finish. The other reason I did it like this is because this is a fairly easy to understand process for beginners or those who don't have a lot of extra Blender tools and add-ons in their arsenal. If you don't have the budget for Unwrap Me, you can still do this workflow pretty easily, although the tools definitely save a lot of time. In a future video, I'll start unwrapping each section and packing the UVs. We'll also talk a little bit about optimizing the layout for baking. Don't forget that down in the description, there are links to some great tools, and go ahead and drop a comment to let me know what part of material and UV setup you struggle with, so I can cover it in the future. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, until next time, take care of yourself and each other.